South, which are presently under consideration, so we await the outcome of that with considerable interest.
Sir Sean Lynch. I call Sean Lynch.
Could the Minister outline who was involved in the process to develop the framework for the PFG?
Well, the parties to the Fresh Start agreement last autumn agreed that a programme for government framework adopting an outcomes-based approach will be developed. All of the parties on the previous executive were involved in a detailed process to develop the draft framework, and the parties continued to engage actively throughout the development phase until the framework was concluded after the election. None of those involved in the process expressed reservations during the engagement period, so the parties who are now expressing opposition to the draft programme for government framework are either being opportunistic or did not understand the process in which they were engaged. And I think it was significant that the Ulster Unionist Party chickened out of membership of the executive, left the executive, and of course the SDLP, who were part of that process of deciding on this way forward, without any objection whatsoever, then decided in the aftermath of the election that they would chicken out of the executive also.
I call Paula Bradshaw.
Deputy Speaker, can I ask the Deputy First Minister why there are no actual numerical targets against any of the indicators in this draft, and how credible does he feel that the programme for government is at the minute if the public are not able to measure whether progress will have been made?
Well, the public have declared themselves totally satisfied in the main with our approach in relation to the outcome of the first consultation, which drew in something like 810 submissions. And I think as we go forward in the second phase, obviously these are all matters that will be considered during the course of that. And then in the aftermath of that, we will clearly have a further conversation about how we take the whole process forward. So I am satisfied that the public thus far are content. I haven't heard that criticism from anybody within that group of 810 that have made the submissions. Quite willing to listen to what they have to say, but I think in the time ahead there will be opportunities for people to have their say on these matters.
Colin McGrath. I call Colin McGrath.
Question number 4, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The First Minister and I are listening carefully to the arguments in the Muller and Dos Santos application before the High Court in London and in the McCord and Agnew and others applications in Belfast. At present, however, all relevant lines of argument are being ventilated by the existing parties.
Colin McGrath for supplementary.
Thank you. The Deputy First Minister will be aware that Nicola Sturgeon has respected the majority will of the people of Scotland in supporting the legal case brought forward to the Supreme Court. I think we need a wee bit more information than just another case is doing it. Why is this government not supporting that initiative?
Well, I think in this instance it's quite clear that the member's asking a question that he knows what the answer is. And the answer is quite clearly in the run into the referendum. Our partners in government were on a different side of the debate from ourselves. And just like the fact that the SDLP and the Ulster Unionists, who are now a combined opposition, are on opposite sides of the debate, with the Ulster Unionist position that the people have spoken, and in the context that they speak about is the UK, and that they should get on with it. So it's quite clear that the SDLP and the Ulster Unionists are divided on the issue. Where the First Minister and I are united was the fact that we were able to write to the British Prime Minister outlining a series of serious concerns, grave concerns that we have about the implications of Brexit in relation to how we protect the interests of the people that we represent. And I think the good news is that in the course of the North-South Ministerial Council meeting, which I will speak to when I give a report on it tomorrow in the Assembly, we were able to put in place a high-level working group of civil servants in our department, the Department of the Taoiseach and the Department of Foreign Affairs, to take forward the work that we will have to deal with in the time ahead. It's obvious to me from my perspective that we are consistently getting reports out of London which are very confusing, which are confusing not just people within the political process but the general public and people in the business community. And I think it's very, very important as we go forward, for example, that the British government at least would tell the devolved institutions what their objectives are in the context of a negotiation with the European Union. Thus far, they have failed to do so.
I call Christopher Stalford.
Thank you, Madam Principal Deputy Speaker. Would the Deputy First Minister agree with me that it's the sign of a responsible and a mature government that, regardless of whether you were for Remain or for Leave, you now work with the situation as you now find it?
Member come to his question.
Would he also agree that that's what a responsible government should do, rather than, in a similar vein, refusing to meet the future President of the United States of America?
Well, I think as we go forward, the implications of Brexit for all of us and for the people that we represent, whether it be the business community, the agri-food industry, the community voluntary sector, our educational institutions, places a massive responsibility on those of us who had the courage to go into government together to ensure that we deal with the set of circumstances which are before us. And as I've outlined during the course of my contribution to this, we did deal with it by writing to the British Prime Minister. I noted that the leader of the SDLP this morning on Good Morning also described it as weak, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. And then I think criticised us because of the length of time it took the Prime Minister to respond. Well, that was the Prime Minister's responsibility to respond. It wasn't our responsibility. What we have been doing is getting on with the work. We have obviously given instructions to all of our departments to be up to speed in all of this in the time ahead. And of course, our contribution to the North-South Ministerial Council and the formation of a high-level working group clearly shows that we're very, very active in trying to deal with a set of circumstances which denies us, for example, full information about where the negotiations are going to go if and when Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty is triggered.
Sir Philip Smith. I call Philip Smith.
Principal Deputy Speaker, what discussions has the Deputy First Minister had with the First Minister regarding the Supreme Court appeal, and are they any closer to producing an agreed joined-up post-Brexit plan for Northern Ireland?
Well, I think I've outlined during the course of previous answers that the First Minister and I are very much engaged in the process of ensuring that we work with the Irish Government to protect the interests of the people, all of the people who live in this island. In terms of the court case, back to my previous answer to the SDLP, members asking a question that he knows the answer to. And in politics, I think that's okay, because the DUP were on the different side of the debate in the run of the referendum. We were on the other side of the debate. That's democracy, that's politics. I have to live with that, even if I didn't appreciate it. But I have to deal with the outcome of all of that. And I think the First Minister and I have been very sensible in terms of how we're trying to deal with the situation and ensuring that by working closely together through all of our departments, working with the Irish Government, that we do everything in our power to ensure that the issues that we raised during the course of the letter to the Prime Minister don't affect us negatively. Things like the border. We don't want any border between North and South. We want support for our agri-food industry. We want support for our education establishment. We want future funding for our institutions. And we clearly, in terms of a common travel area, when you look at the number of businesses in the North that are totally dependent upon people who have come from Eastern Europe to work and work very positively and productively within our businesses. For example, Wrightbus in Antrim with something like over 20% of its workforce from Eastern Europe. These are critical issues which we are very exercised about, and in fact, rather than sniping from the sidelines, we're actually doing something about it.
I call Chris Little.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister if he agrees that a legislative consent motion should be brought to allow this Assembly the opportunity to debate and consider the terms of any Article 50 proposal?
Well, again, I'm speaking on behalf of the Office of First and Deputy First Minister. Whether or not our partners in government would favour that is really a matter for themselves. Speaking personally and speaking on behalf of my party, not on behalf of the DUP, I would absolutely be in favour of a legislative consent motion.
I call Jim Allister.
The Deputy First Minister is helpless when it comes to stopping the United Kingdom leaving the EU. But could I ask him straight, has he any approval from his partner in government, the DUP, for a status for Northern Ireland which would dilute our leaving in comparison to the rest of the United Kingdom?
Well, I think the entire process that we're engaged in is really in a state of flux at this stage. Nobody, me, First Minister, the member who has just spoken, or any other member of this House, can put their hand on their heart and say that they know what the final outcome of all of this would be. One thing is for sure, is that we have a duty and responsibility to protect the interests of the people that we represent. And again, speaking personally, I would be in favour of a designated status within the European Union. But well, that's a matter for other parties. The member obviously wouldn't be in favour of that. The member obviously believes that the overall vote should take precedence over the fact that people here in the north voted to remain, the fact that people in Scotland voted to remain. And that does create a problem for the British government. It also creates a problem for the European Union, the fact that we have in these devolved institutions a very clearly expressed wish by the electorate that they see their future in Europe. So, as far as I'm concerned, in the negotiation that's upcoming, everything is on the table.
Sir Jennifer McCann. I call Jennifer McCann.
Question 5, please.
The most recent joint ministerial council meeting took place on Wednesday, the 9th of November, and the last North-South ministerial council meeting took place on Friday, the 18th of November 2016. At the joint ministerial council meeting, we outlined a number of the issues which are of particular importance to us. We made it clear that we expect to see engagement on these and other matters intensify and deepen over the coming weeks, and that we are determined to work together to champion the interests of the people we represent. We had a very good meeting with the Irish Government on Friday at the North-South Ministerial Council plenary in Armagh, and I will be making a detailed Assembly statement tomorrow morning, Tuesday the 22nd of November, on our discussions. Ministers have also had discussions at various NSMC sectoral meetings that have taken place in recent weeks and months, and that engagement is ongoing. Indeed, both governments have agreed that the North-South Ministerial Council plenary should meet again in the first quarter of 2017. In the light of the UK referendum to leave the EU, the focus for executive ministers throughout all these discussions has been to ensure that our unique position is recognised and our requirements are understood, and how we can ensure the best possible outcome for all of our people.
Jennifer McCann for supplementary.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer? And I know you've already mentioned about the different engagements, but can you sort of elaborate on what engagement has taken place with the Irish Government, particularly to identify issues of mutual interest and to also exert joint influence on the British Government and the EU?
Well, there is, as I said earlier, ongoing engagement between officials up to the head of the civil service level, and specifically we are engaging with the Irish Government through the North-South Ministerial Council, and the respective administrations have been carrying out an audit of border issues. This was discussed at the plenary meeting last Friday, the 18th of November, and we will also engage further on Brexit via the British-Irish Council, and the next big meeting is scheduled for next week in Cardiff.
Call Sandra Overend.
Principal Deputy Speaker, can the Deputy First Minister explain what is his assessment of the approaches of the different devolved administrations in Belfast, Cardiff and Edinburgh?
Well, it's not my duty and responsibility to speak on behalf of Scotland and Wales. I only have authority to speak on our own behalf. There are other factors at play, particularly in relation to Scotland, which I'm sure the member is very acutely aware of. No doubt the First Minister and I will have further conversations with our